So something I wanted to bring up, if you guys are cool to talk about it, I've been genuinely curious, is removing all the, it's not bullshit, but just removing everything from like the social media movements and like the political movements. I've been very curious, genuinely curious, to talk to you guys about that. I know you've been in it for a long time, but just I don't want to say recent because I don't want to like devalue, but like the turn to Christianity, and not just the turn to Christianity, but like the feet first. I'm gonna do all of it. Like this is what I believe in. Whoever wants to start first. I know this is a long conversation.
Do you want me like a testimony or
so
what?
Yeah. It's like what? Like
I mean,
what?
I can go first if you want.
Well, like what piqued your interest? What got you into it? What got you sold on it? And why do you sustain it? I think that's a good four.
I can go first. So I mean,
yeah, sure.
Grew up in the church. Grew up in youth group. Knew scripture well. Was in love with it. Carried it on through.
Well, was or was not.
What?
Was in love with
you? What you were?
Okay.
I was in love with it.
And
or was
the
not.
love never stopped. The love only grew. So
Okay.
I was saying was as in like, because I'm going to say like this is two different forms of Christianity. One that like a lot of people are like known with as being called like a lukewarm Christian. So I would say like that's what I was, right? Especially like in my teenage years or whatever. Like it was one of those things like if we were out somewhere and someone asked me about it, like, yeah, I would talk about it. I would affirm it. I would, talk to the best of my ability, whatever, but I wasn't outspoken about it or didn't live it or didn't, made a lot of excuses or tried to do like a lot of workarounds or a lot of, well, it's not technically like, a lot of that kind of stuff, right? Like that all the way up until like COVID, I would say. And kind of like the life that I wanted was going that way, was going great. Things were doing good. And it's like, you don't need Jesus when things are going good type of thing. It's not something that you think about or anything like that. Once COVID hit, that's kind of when everything came crashing down, from laying off from my job to my grandpa very sick to loss of relationships to just absolute loneliness. And that's what kind of started getting me back there. And my sister and her fiance, they started kind of like the same thing and started going back to church a lot. And it was almost kind of like that feeling of, what, you think you're better than me because you're going to church, because you're doing this? Not that anyone ever said it, but you start comparing yourself, especially when you call yourself a Christian and you deep down know that you aren't,
fulfilling what you
well,
know
your fruits
you
are bad,
should.
know? So that's what a lot of it was. And then same thing even with her fiance, like when we would talk about it, I was like, oh, I don't have answers for this dude. Like I always assumed like
what were they asking you?
No, just like certain answers when it came to marriage or sex or like how a Christian should act or whatever. Because I was always the guy, I never surrounded myself with people from church, with people. So I was always the most knowledgeable guy when it came to that kind of stuff, right? Never really had somebody that would challenge me and ultimately prove me wrong and me not have an answer for.
Oh, okay.
So then that was kind of an eye-opening call. That was kind of, this and that. And again, yeah, just all of a sudden, you reevaluate and you're like, man, I'm not living this life. I'm not doing this. I'm making excuses. I look like the rest of the world. I am a lukewarm Christian. I am this. And then decided, I was like, it's probably a good idea to go back to church. Hey, I've never, read the Bible cover to cover. I could say like if I added up all the different books, that you've read sporadically, I'd probably read the whole Bible, but just never sat down and said, I am reading the whole Bible cover to cover with study, with, everything. So that's what I did. And I feel like once you give a certain amount of knowledge, you just want more and more and more and more. And now I'm at work and I'm fortunate enough to where I am able to, have, AirPods on, and now I'm listening to anything from philosophy to historical evidence to scholars to archaeological to debates, and that's just all kind of listen to. And you do build your knowledge, you do build your repertoire, and you truly do fall in love with it that much more with the more that you kind of learn. And then you just want to learn more and you want to learn more and you want to become closer to God. And through that you realize, wow, I am not the same person I was a year ago or 2 years ago. I am different. I do like this version of me. I am happier. I don't deal with the same things that I dealt with before. It's almost like you've lost 100 pounds because I mean, you put that onto Christ, and that's kind of what it does. And yeah, I'm kind of trying to keep it up and try to go even further and even more. And I guess that's kind of where I'm at right now.
Where do you go to church at?
Calvary.
Over at the main one off of Suna?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. I was just curious.
Solid church. Yeah, go to their Wednesday night Bible study. I mean, that's definitely my favorite. You know, takes them, you know, an hour and a half to go through 2 chapters.
Right. Yeah.
And I'm sitting here with copious notes. I'm like, man, I don't even remember the last time I even like wrote this much other than high school and stuff. And
you're like, bro, I went to school less prepared than this.
Yeah, I never showed up to school with a notebook, but when I show up to church with a notebook and highlighters and pens and
I'm getting a PhD right now.
Literally, yeah. I was trying to learn as much. I was like, I've never once in my life was like, you know what? I'm not going to play video games. I'm going to, you know, listen to, you know, this. I don't even know if you would call them sermons or whatever, but like. Well, these debates and take notes. And
so what I enjoy, so it's funny you bring up the Wednesday nights, because what I enjoy about what Skip does is, because I tried for maybe not enough time, but I tried for a little bit going to Sunday services at Calvary.
And that was another thing that even kind of inspired me to get back into. I was like, because I mean, take this as no offense, please, but I was like, Noah's going to church. What the hell am I doing? I was like, dude, Dave, you've gone so far off the path. Well, get your ass back together.
Well, that's what it's about.
And that's truly what it was, too. Like, all this, I was like, I suck. I'm going.
Well, because we had a couple conversations about it, yeah. But I was trying to go Sundays, and the only ones that I enjoyed was the Sunday mornings. And from what I can tell, at least, I haven't been in a minute, but what I could tell at least was that those are the last few Sundays that, at least at the time, that Skip was still pastoring at that church, and I get a lot from him because watching him pastor in general, watching him pastor is like you come away with something, you learn something, and this, I don't mean this as disrespect, but when his son does it. For me, 100%.
And I will say he has gotten better, and I think it's because of people were kind of like, "Hey, buddy, like we."
But I don't get. I actually, the last couple of times, like 2 or 3 times that I went, I left early because it wasn't so much of like it's teaching; it's just affirming what the general, maybe lukewarm Christian already knows. Is that
I don't know if I'd go that far.
It's like God is great, Jesus is awesome, believe in him, you go to heaven, hell is bad, the world is bad, whatever. And that's what I pulled out of it, and I was just like, this dude is trying to be like this TikTok pastor. They're trying to get like the clips to put it out to make him bigger. And I didn't leave any sermon from his son feeling or knowing that I gained something out of it. Yeah. But then when I listen, because now what I do is, and I haven't as much as I should, but like what I usually do is I will just go on Spotify and go to what Skip puts on Spotify, and I'll just listen to those. Yeah. I'll find the part A and the part B, and I listen to those, because at least from that I'll pull something out of it. Like,
and I 100% agree with you. I mean,
you know what I mean? I feel like I'm going to school. Yeah. Like you were saying, like
I will say, as much as I 100% I'm on your side and truly agree with you. Like, there's even sometimes to where, like, I mean, you know, I understand, like, Skip will have like a prior obligation and need someone to fill in. It happens everywhere.
Yeah.
And I do, like happened like 2 Wednesday nights ago, and I was like, man, like, there is that feeling and there is that difference. But I will say, you do have to give a little bit of grace. I mean, these are young pastors that are being pastored, that are trying to learn, that are trying to be better, that are stepping up, that are doing this. And and at least for Skip's son, he has gotten a lot better, because he's filled in a lot since last time you've seen or whatever. Yeah, homie's gotten better. You know, he's growing up.
I just got to the point where
you're born for God's plan, but you don't trip along the way. So it's at the same point, like, you're looking at this guy who's coming up and teaching something, and maybe the rest of us are like, but he's not giving anything that's outside of, like,
it's nothing like, remotely heretical.
Yeah, he's not preaching an heritage. But yeah, I understand. It's not which I get you.
I want to go to church to learn something.
Yeah.
You know, I just don't want to go to church to learn that either I like yes, I'm going to heaven, or I'm shitty, but thank God I'm going to heaven. I don't want to learn anything. I just want to learn something about the Bible. I want to learn something. I want to learn. I just want to know something I don't already know.
Come with me on Wednesdays, dog. You'll know that Bible in and out.
And so that's why
You'll know the Hebrew that these words come from and their meanings.
Right.
You'll know the geography. Come on Wednesday nights, dog.
Yeah, and that's what I've heard about the Wednesday nights. Is that it's more of a Bible study than it is like a
it's not a sermon.
Yeah, exactly.
No, it's not for families. It's not. Well, we're coming to church to commune and to learn and to praise, and that's what Sundays are. They're for praise. They're for worship. They're for a sermon. They're for families. Wednesday nights is It's
and then so like when I went to
scholars.
So when I went to Austin, I was there from a Tuesday to I think Tuesday to Tuesday or something. No, Thursday to Tuesday. Mm-hmm. And I was looking around for like a church to go to when I was out there. I just wanted to try something new.
Yeah.
And I just have a lot of Catholic friends. And they're like, you find a fucking Catholic church. That'd be cool. So I found one. Uh-huh. And I was like, all right, that'd be nice. So I go and I was like, okay, ritual. And then it was just done. And I was like, oh, I don't really get a whole lot out of this. And I remember I texted one of my Catholic friends. I was like, hey, this is what happened. Like, is that normal? And he goes, yep, that's the Catholic Church. I was like, well, I don't really get a whole... Like, what am I missing?
And to their credit, it's like they'll have their mass, right? And that's kind of what you're talking about with, but then they also is expected, especially of like members, that there is a lot more of, what is it called? Starts with a C. I'm blanking right now. Tired. I can't remember. But before you be confirmed into the church, or even while you go through their adult program, what the heck is it called?
Talking about like their confirmation?
No, but even before
catechism.
That. Yeah, when you go through catechism.
Catechism is the school that you go through, right?
But they even have one for adults. It's like the RCIA. I don't remember exactly what it stands for.
Look, we have Google.
Well,
let's look that shit up. Yeah.
So like for me, I grew up Catholic. I'm all caught up on my sacraments right now, except for getting married in a Catholic church. Sorry on that one.
Yeah, hey, your wedding was beautiful.
That's on me, Jesus. My bad. But
I think that was a great wedding. I loved it.
So, I grew up Catholic, had all my sacraments done, and at some point, it's not that I walked away, but it's that my youth, or like my life as a youth, just ended up not being there. I got into junior wrestling. All the tournaments were on Sundays. You didn't make church because you're at Rio Grande High School at fucking 4 a.m. trying to do your last minute weigh-ins while you're wearing a trash bag and Ugg boots. And, you're just eventually at some point, just because of the way that we did live, church did take a backseat. And you only showed up on like Easter, Christmas, the big ones. But
the ones that God really cares about.
Yeah. The one that everybody else in the church will have you believe that God cares about. So that was essentially how it took. And then just going into like my teenage years, just didn't go to church. It wasn't that I didn't believe. It wasn't that, I was an atheist or anything else like that, as we just didn't go.
I was trying to convert him for years. It didn't work.
Then psychedelics found me. And that was a whole nother fucking realm on its own, where I'm exploring different ideas. I'm trying to play around with everything. And I'm messing around with like, well, what if it's this? What if it's that? And I'm trying to like ask every question that's already been asked, not getting an answer. And then for my wife and I, there was one day we had a conversation. She ultimately asked, this was before we got together. And she goes, if you had kids, how would you want to raise them? I said, I want to raise them Catholic, or at least Protestant at like the minimum. And she goes, why? And I said, because I feel so lost for years, and I'm not going to deny my child the ability to have a community to fall back on. Because one thing that I realize now, being grown, is I could have fallen back on the initial faith that I had and found community without having to go through this big process that I ever did. But I didn't choose to. So I'm going to at least afford them the opportunity to, and if they choose to do the same path that I did, that's on them. And eventually, God willing, they find their way back. And when we started dating, because she grew up Catholic as well, and she had her own issues with the church. And we were just like, let's go to Legacy. Let's just start dipping our feet in, and eventually we'll find our way. Whether it's here, whether it's there, whether it's anywhere. And we went to Legacy mainly just because that's where my grandma went to church.
Keep going. I'm just going to open the door and like get some fucking circulation in here.
So that was pretty much just kind of like the way to, one, dip our feet in, two, spend time with family. That was it. And I immediately had so many problems with Legacy.
Yeah.
Did not like the way that they started their service, where it was just money, 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 money. Bro, even in the Catholic Church, I never had an issue with, like, they're like, hey,
Pass
give
the
your
plate.
tithes.
Yeah.
But, and, they passed the collection plate. That was it. They didn't bear on money so hard. But Legacy, like, their whole deal was like, hey, money, money, money. Even one, this one, like, sent me. There was one sermon that Steve did where he said, you're not a true Christian if you don't tithe to the church. That fucking sent me. That one, I instantly was like, we are not going to stay. This is not our church.
So the only pushback I would have on that is like 90% of me agrees with that. Agrees with like what you feel like, right? But the other 10% of me is like, okay, but in the Bible, it says to,
So you're talking about old laws in like Leviticus.
No. Where Jesus says, "Give to Caesar was owed to Caesar,
And give to God what is his."
Right, yeah.
Yes. So that passage specifically, the physical money we have on this earth goes to the United States government, whatever. We're paying our taxes, we're doing X, Y, and Z.
Yeah.
But our hearts, our minds, our souls, everything belongs to God. We're to give that to God.
But where does tithing come into that?
So
in that specific,
so
like,
I think it's
passage.
like Matthew 7. I could
Feel free to look that up.
I can be entirely wrong. There's a it's either Matthew or Mark. I know it starts with an M, but I confuse it every time. It basically just says to like give of the charity of your own heart.
Yeah, he wants I can't remember the exact. I'm sure I can find it here, but it's like I'll see if I can find it. But yeah, it's like don't give out of necessity, give out of your heart. If not, God don't want it.
Yeah, don't give money to the church because you think it's going to quite literally get you a ticket to heaven.
Right.
Give money because you believe in this, because this is what you need to keep the house of God alive. That's why. Your own heart will dictate why you're doing this. And like my wife, she doesn't necessarily give money to the church now. She gives it to different charity organizations that are Christian backed. Like she gave money to an organization that helps fund mothers who want to have abortions. It helps pay for childcare up to 2 or 3 years after delivery. So either it can help them work their way into adoption if it's not something they want, or eventually make the decision that they want to keep their child 2 to 3 years after delivery.
Which is a good grace period.
And so it helps these moms who are maybe on the fence, don't want to go straight to an abortion, or it was a mistake, and this organization is willing to help and make sure. So my wife gave money to that. Me, I dabble in between. Like there's certain like recovery organizations that I want to give to. There's different areas, because the church receiving money is not an uncommon thing, but giving to God what is God's, I'm giving back to his creation.
Yeah, and it's like in the New Testament, there's no specific verse that's like, oh yeah, tithe your 10%, tithe this, tithe that. Even the 10%, I mean, that's taken from
Leviticus, to give to the Levites,
so they
can
stay
survive.
with it. But we see examples like in Acts, when the early church is born, first being made and born, that there would be people that would sell off portions of land to give money to the church, or like there was even the one where and that kind of goes back to doing it with a faithful and good heart out of want, not necessity. There was a story in Acts, I think it's Acts 10, I think, where this husband
voice, you're lying.
Yeah, this husband and wife see that another couple goes in, sells off half their land, takes the proceeds from that, and gives it to the church, and kind of sees that they get a little bit of praise for it, or they're a little bit of likeness for it. So like, oh, we'll do the same thing, not out of I want to give to the church to build it, to strengthen it, to use it to, feed the poor, feed the hungry, like the early church was doing, but out of like a prideful way, so people would look at them like, oh wow, look how generous and awesome these people are. So they sell off a portion of their land and give the money to church. And I think, again, I need more study, but I think they were talking to Peter, and he was like, yeah, so this is all the money that you got from the land that you're giving church. Yep, all of it. Really? All of it? And in reality, Holy Spirit was kind of tipping him off that it wasn't it. And for lying and for doing that, dude dropped dead. Asked his wife the exact same thing, collaborates the same story, drops dead. And the idea is, not of a faithful heart, not of joy, not of, it was out of, oh, look at me, look what I've done, look at this. But I mean, I guess to answer your question, there is no specific
thing
in the New Testament, at least.
You even go back to Genesis, right, between Cain and Abel, right? One brother gives the best of everything he has.
But anyways, you should finish off why after you came to Christianity before we get off on a tangent.
Sorry. But anyways,
all in.
So that sent me because I knew that there was more than just the money aspect of it. And I think I did get fed up with, like nice watches, all of this showing up, the Joel Osteens of the world working their way through that.
Those are the extremes, but it's still good to like mention that
prosperity theology idea. I was like, absolutely not. So Maramari Emmanuel, right? Is his full name? I started listening to him.
Can you pull him up real quick?
Did you see he got excommunicated? And started another church?
Yeah, I saw that. I started bouncing between like different Catholics, different Orthodox, Protestants, just going in on listening to different people. And then...
Oh, yeah, I've seen this dude on Instagram and shit.
Dude got stabbed in the eye, and the guy that stabbed him, like, pretty much almost cut off his own finger because the knife closed on him when he went to go stab. The dude sat down and started praying for him and started tending to his wounds. Imagine someone trying to end your life.
That guy. Yeah.
So
dude's a saint.
So,
all just to get exiled from the church.
Right. So that really set me.
It's a whole long thing, but it was because it was simple things. It's like because he would call people sweetie, or because he sounded too.
Just see what you can get.
So, anyways, that really put me in a position where, I was raised. If you're going to be a janitor, you're going to be the best damn janitor you ever seen. If you're going to be a ditch digger, those are going to be the best ditches you ever seen in your life. Well, that really started to come to life when I came to Christianity is I'm going to be the best Christian. And real quick, I was hit right in the face.
Good luck.
That I suck. And it wasn't until like months later that I was faced with a video on Instagram that was talking about that somebody tried to stump a theologian about like the weight of sin and said, well, if sin's so heavy, then why do I feel free? And the response said, if you place a 400-pound stone on a dead body, does it feel anything? And the guy goes, no. And he goes, exactly. Without God, you're dead. And he goes, it's not until you're alive that sin became heavy. And I think it was at that moment.
Oh, shit. That's a good way to put it. True. That's a good way to put it.
Yeah.
It wasn't until like at that moment that my whole like life really became heavy. I felt sluggish, dude. And so
like when you understand the feeling of actually breaking God's heart.
And so the day that I made that recommitment, because I was baptized as a baby. I grew up always believing in God until obviously like my formative years, my teenage years, my early 20s, where I started having those issues. Once I came back, I felt that weight lift, and it was beautiful. I stumble, I make my screw ups every day. I am nowhere near even close to where I wish I was, and I fall.
But a lot better where you came from.
Yeah, I fall. I turn back to God, and I feel lighter. I don't feel lighter because I'm just like, oh, hey, forgive me. Oh, I feel so much better for that. I genuinely, like, in my heart, like, I want to cry every time I turn. Every time I turn back to God, I'm, like, wanting to cry. Like, yeah, and it's the story of the prodigal son, right? I don't deserve why I'm coming back and all these riches and all the glory that's coming to me. But the reason why is that I'm receiving all of this is because I came back. even though I walked away and I spent all my dad's money and I've been destroying everything else, all the Father cared about was that I came back. And that, you know, all angels in heaven rejoice when even one person comes back.
Right. Yeah.
You know, the one sheep out of 99.
Yeah, the 99.
Every proverb that's ever been told, that was. And so when I really had that moment and especially when my wife said that she was pregnant, that even set another standard in my head that when my son arrives here, I'm going to do everything that I can to be a standard. Even if I'm falling down behind closed doors, I'm going to set a standard. Because if I'm falling behind closed doors and repenting to God, my son sees a man that's standing forward. Eventually, when he's old enough, I'll have these conversations with him.
And sees a man that, oh, wow, look how strong daddy is. Even he needs Jesus. You
Right.
know? How am I not going to?
And I'm never going to not give credit to God.
Yeah.
It's all going to be, the only reason why I stand in front of you is because God let me. The only reason why we have everything we have is because God allowed me to. And all of this can be taken away in an instant because God decided I have corrupted everything. Or because I chose to go a different path that shined away from that light. So me having my son presented in front of me brought forth a new light that the only way I'm going to do this right is to have God in front of me. There's plenty of people out there who will say, like, oh, I'm an atheist and I raised my kid right, or oh, I'm this and I've never had an issue. And I think for me, it's realizing the only way I'm going to be successful is to have God in front of me and to be following behind him at every step of the way. Because that's how my faith is what's going to bring my son life. The same story of like Abraham and Isaac, right? His faith that God would not let him kill his own son is
Right.
what brought his son life. What eventually led all the way down the line to what we have today.
Right.
And that's the only way that I can achieve that. So I have to go forth with that same heart. And it sucks because I fall all the time and I feel horrible. But knowing that on my side, the one religion that I cannot, because like I said, I've done my whole little
Tried them all.
yeah, I've went through pretty much almost every. There was a brief point where I'm not even gonna lie, Islam I like looked into. I'm not even kidding.
He's like, even the dirty Muslims.
There was a brief point where I was like, what if there's something? I'm tired. What if there's something? And I could not get behind a single thing about it. I was like, all of this feels disgusting. I feel horrible for even considering like the most pure version of this because it still feels wrong. Judaism, considered that. And guess what? I felt awful the entire time.
Yeah, you read a couple seconds into the Talmud, you're like, hey, wait a minute.
Yeah, no, like
What does the Talmud say about having sex with 3-year-olds? I don't know.
the Talmud was one of those things where I was like, that doesn't sound right.
I don't know if I want to go to school for that one.
And Christianity was like the one thing where it has a set standard. Never turn to somebody in anger, no matter how many times they've wronged you, but stand your ground. Don't let them take any more from you. But you're not going out and pursuing anything else than what is rightfully given to you by God.
Right.
There's not this standard of defacing anybody around you. Now, what mankind has done in the past, I think that's what led to the majority of people's issues is, the corruption of man themselves have created their own issues. Where the rest of us go, oh, well, since the Catholic Church sold tickets to heaven back in like, that's my problem. You're like, in the Bible, does
Right.
it say you can buy your way into heaven?
Right. Yeah,
No, because
exactly.
that's the whole camel passing through the eye of a needle. You can't just buy your way into heaven. So there it is.
Right.
Right.
Oh, actually,
People don't have an issue with God, they have an issue with man, and that's their problem. And I think a lot of people need to become aware of that fact that they have an issue with what somebody else has done to them, and now they're cursing God in that name rather than realizing there's evil in this world that's not of God.
Yeah. Yeah, that's the underlying
I hear somebody else use the Bible to
Well, that was
try and make a point. and then they just take it as fact, and it's like, bro, have you read it
Yeah,
yourself?
I was gonna say, well,
no,
that
but-
was great. First of all, but second of all, yeah, that's the underlying theme that I see with a lot of my friends that have that step away from Christianity is because of the church, and it's like, okay, well, it sounds
and
like
the
to me
simple-
you had a bad experience with a human.
Yeah.
Well, and
the
him and I had a whole conversation about
and the
this the other day.
simple answer to that is if I picked up a violin right now and tried to play Beethoven, you would hate it.
That doesn't mean you should hate Beethoven.
That doesn't mean you should hate Beethoven.